The big M Drug Mart is open for business. With its giant orange sign and its handy strip mall location, the independent Calgary store is the place to go for, well, lots of stuff.
So we had Corningware, we had lawnmowers and gas barbecues, Christmas goods, Easter goods, that kind of thing.
On this particular day, a Sunday in 1982, the Big M is making a few sales. Some groceries, plastic cups, a bike lock, nothing out of the ordinary. But some people are not there to shop. Among the customers are Calgary police officers, and they're watching the sales rack up. Pretty soon, they move into action, because the Big M is breaking the law. The charge? Selling goods on a Sunday. The fine? $40. And that little ticket ends up shaping the way Canadians shop forever.
A Calgary drugstore was charged with breaking the Lord's Day Act.
A 78-year-old federal law which regulates the opening of business establishments on Sundays.
To allow this law to be struck down is to encourage a godless and rootless society.
You shouldn't ask them whether or not they want to shop on Sunday. You should ask them whether or not they want to work on Sunday.
It's hard to imagine how such a case would wind up before the Supreme Court of Canada, but it did.
I'm Falen Johnson, and this is See You in Court, a podcast about the cases that changed Canada. This is The Big M, a story about a neighborhood store that decided to fight a $40 fine all the way to the Supreme Court. A fight that sparks a nationwide debate about shopping on Sundays, social values, and religious freedoms. Allison Dempster is here from Calgary, the place where this battle starts. Allison, so tell me about this big little drugstore.
Okay, let's go back to 1978. A new drugstore has opened its doors in Forest Lawn, which is a working-class neighborhood in Calgary, and it's calling itself the Big M.
Okay, so why the M?
I had that question too.
It just sounded like a chain name, and so we picked it out of the air.
Nancy Lockhart is the co-owner, and there's a photo of her on opening day. She's in a store aisle wearing a striped pantsuit that's giving 70s boss perfectly.
I don't remember the pantsuit. I remember spending a lot of time crouched down facing merchandise on the shelves to make sure that it was perfect.
Nancy is in her early 20s, and she's ambitious. She might lack experience, but she has a head for business.
When you're that age, you don't know what you don't know, and so you don't have the kind of fears and concerns. And also, I didn't have any net worth at the time, so there's nothing to lose. And
Nancy and her business partner, Michael Lesrado, launched the Big M on a lean budget. They're looking for all the angles. They buy used cash registers, they set up the shelving themselves, and right from the start, they open on Sundays.
And it became our busiest day of the week. Families would go to church and then wander over after and shop as a family. It was entertainment as much as shopping. But for busy families where both members are working, Sunday was an important day to stock up on what you might need for the week ahead.
Turns out being open on Sundays is good for business. At first, Nancy has no idea it's also against the law. Plenty of other stores are open 7 days a week. But then the fines start coming in.
I remember being surprised to get the first tickets, and they were very minimal. I can't remember how much. And so we just paid the fines and kept on opening just as everybody else did. It wasn't as though we were an outlier at the time.
So breaking the law is just a part of doing business at this time.
Pretty much. But after a while, Nancy is fed up. She's sick of paying the fines. She's worried officials might shut the Big M down on Sundays, and losing their best sales day could put them out of business. Also for her, there's a principle at stake.
Lives have changed a great deal over the last, 50 years, and people are so busy and overwhelmed that they just need flexibility. And I just think that it's really not up to the government to tell you when you can shop and when you can't.
Okay, so for Nancy, this is a matter of government overreach.
Yeah, so she and her partner make a decision. They're not going to keep paying the fines. They're going to get a lawyer.
thrust of our argument, pretty much our entire argument, is in the first.
In 1982, Tim Boyle is just starting his career. He's a junior lawyer at a Calgary firm when the Big M case lands on his desk. And the charges involve a law that sounds old.
I remember seeing the title on the act, the Lord's Day Act, and I thought at the time, you've got to be kidding. We have a statute that actually imposes the will of the Christian deity on the subjects of Canada.
The Lord's Day Act came into force in 1907, so pretty old by Canadian standards. But the legislative tradition goes way back, all the way back to medieval kings.
Okay, I was not expecting to go back to medieval times today.
Yeah, we're going all the way back to Anglo-Saxon codes of law here, when Sunday was a holy day and people didn't work. So even if you were an indentured serf toiling on a feudal estate, you should get a break. And this concept worked its way into Canadian law with the Lord's Day Act, which made it unlawful to buy, sell, or deliver anything on Sunday.
What if there's like an emergency situation? Like, say you are having people over for dinner, your in-laws are coming, you need wine. You really need wine. What do you do?
As urgent a matter as that is, you would be out of luck. But there were exceptions. For example, businesses that delivered milk or made maple syrup, they were exempt.
So in some ways, this is the most Canadian law ever. No shopping unless it's for Canadian dairy, syrup, or like Leafs jerseys or something.
Well, we didn't mess around when it came to maple syrup production and sugaring off season. But as for exemptions for Leafs fans, absolutely not.
So the Big M didn't fall under any of these exemptions.
Well, pharmacies could sell medicine on Sundays.
Right, and the Big M was a drugstore.
Yeah, so the store had a pharmacy in it, but the Big M was selling things other than medicine. Merchandise it should not have sold on Sundays under the Lord's Day Act.
Okay, so they did break the law.
Oh yeah, and they are not denying that. They're about to argue that the law itself needs to go. Tim Boyle, the Big M's lawyer, knows he has a big challenge on his hands. He's up against a law that's been around for 75 years, and it has a legal pedigree that's even older. But Tim has something new, Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And in the spring of 1982, the ink is still fresh on the charter. It has just come into effect. And it has some language around the guarantee of religious freedoms that Tim figures would work in his favor.
I instantly knew we had an argument. Something had to give here.
The argument? That this archaic act favors the Christian faith and is therefore discriminatory against other religions and belief systems. So, Tim decides to take the Charter of Rights and Freedoms out for a test drive, starting in the Alberta courts. At first, Tim thinks there might be some other companies willing to challenge the Lord's Day Act along with the Big M. These other businesses are also being hauled into court for breaking the Sunday shopping law. And Tim hopes that when the Big M decides to take its stand, there might be strength in numbers.
So there was a number of defendants in court the day when we made our first appearance. I understood from talking to their counsel that at least some of them were going to challenge the law based on the charter that had just come out. But to our surprise, one by one, they stood before the provincial court and entered guilty pleas and paid the princely sum of $40 as the fine at the time. It was only my client that, really as a matter of principle, said no. My clients really thought the law was improper, and we want to challenge this law, and so I was instructed to go ahead.
It's clear from the start the case is going to be a tricky one. First, Big M is acquitted by a provincial court judge. He rules in favor of Tim's argument that under the Charter, the Lord's Day Act infringes on freedom of religion.
Okay, so Big M wins and they can keep their $40.
Right. It looks like they can now operate on Sundays without getting more fines. But then the Alberta government appeals. It argues that even though the original purpose of the Lord's Day Act was religious, The practical application of it is not. It serves a secular function, regulating business hours, giving workers and families a standard day of rest. At the Alberta Court of Appeal, the judges are split. Here's a reading of Justice J.A. Belzil taking issue with Tim's charter argument.
It is inaccurate to say that the Lord's Day Act compels the observance of Sunday as a religious holy day by all the inhabitants of Canada. The Lord's Day Act does no such thing. It compels neither Christian nor non-Christian to observe Sunday as a religious holy day.
Belzil also argues that Christian moral teachings form part of our society and our legal foundations, and that the Charter shouldn't undo all of that.
With the Lord's Day Act eliminated, will not all references in the statutes to Christmas, Easter, or Thanksgiving be next? What of the use of the Gregorian calendar?
So he's basically making a slippery slope argument.
Exactly. In the end, the court dismisses the province's appeal, but the dissenting opinion makes the stakes clear for Tim.
It exhibited the emotion that was involved, too, when the justice there opined and observed that to allow this law to be struck down is to encourage a godless and rootless society. And I thought that was pretty strong language, but that's an indication of the type of feeling that still prevailed, certainly with some people at the time.
Tim and the owners of the Big M are going to hear more of that type of feeling because Alberta's Attorney General appeals. So now the Big M and a small Calgary law firm are off to the Supreme Court.
So, Allison, before the break, we heard that the Big M case is just about to go to the Supreme Court. Is this what Nancy signed up for when she decided to fight that $40 fine?
Not exactly. I mean, for one thing, the Big M didn't have the money to keep paying the legal fees, but the law firm was willing to foot the bill.
That's very generous of them. Why?
Well, Nancy's lawyers saw the case as a rare opportunity to make a mark at the country's highest court. And this is when it starts hitting home for Nancy. This fight over a $40 fine is going to be consequential in ways she hadn't anticipated. Still, in her day-to-day, she has to keep her nose to the grindstone.
We were so busy working hard all the time that it's not as though we were going to dinner parties and discussing it as a subject. We were just working. But it really wasn't a big topic of discussion.
While Nancy is keeping her business on the rails, Tim Boyle is hitting the books.
I remember working very hard to get a hold of all the issues, spending a long time in the library, doing a lot of research.
Tim may not have a lot of experience with constitutional law, but he knows he's in fresh terrain and the stakes are huge. The Big M is one of the first charter cases to go before the Supreme Court.
This was the first case where an entire federal statute was at stake. It's really the first case as to whether or not the charter was going to work. Work in the sense, could it actually defeat another piece of legislation? No one really knew the answer to that question. So it was a busy time. It was a heady time. It was an exciting time.
So as Tim is preparing to go to the Supreme Court, how is the general public reacting to this case? Are they hearing about it?
Yeah, it's bringing up some tough conversations. Union presidents and church leaders are arguing the Big M case isn't about religious freedoms so much as economic self-interest. If you're a retail worker, Sunday shopping might not sound like such a great idea.
Alberta has recently seen Sunday shopping move in with a vengeance.
You shouldn't ask them whether or not they want to shop on Sunday. You should ask them whether or not they want to work on Sunday.
And he's right on.
I think that the public is used to Sunday closing, and I think that would be a very heavy majority opinion that would favor Sunday closing.
A Calgary mother tells CBC Radio it means Sundays are no longer special.
It's just another day for us. You know, there's nothing special about a weekend for us at all.
It used to be a day that you'd look forward to then?
It used to be. It used to be a day where Larry would spend time with the children, but that doesn't happen anymore.
So for some people, Sunday shopping is basically putting a buzzkill on the weekend.
That's definitely how some people see it. But this is also a time when households are changing. Women are in the workforce in greater numbers. And when both parents are working outside the home, being able to get some shopping done on the weekends is more convenient. Also, the country is becoming more diverse culturally. For some, Sunday doesn't hold religious significance. So this is all part of the debate around the Big M case, as Tim gets ready to go before the Supreme Court in Ottawa. And for all his diligent preparations, he neglects to look at the weather reports.
It's one of the worst blizzards they'd had in years, and I had come ill-prepared, inadequately clothed, no boots or gloves. And I think they had about 3 feet of snow while we were there, so it was a matter of fighting the cold. And I think I had a head cold at the time as well. So in the end, there was a feeling of, let's just get this over with.
Oh, we've all been there. I mean, not at the Supreme Court, but you know what I mean.
Yes, definitely. The elements may have been working against Tim, but when he goes before the Supreme Court bench, he feels good about his chances and his argument that in Canada, some religions have their Sabbath on Sundays, some on Fridays, others on Saturdays, and that under the Charter, the status quo won't do. The federal government can't play favorites. But of course, the Supreme Court judges are also hearing arguments from the Alberta government. And it's not alone. It's been joined by interveners, including the Attorney Generals of Canada, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick. All of these governments are fighting to keep this law on the books. And a big part of their argument is still that it's not so much about religion, it's about a common day of rest. So the judges have 2 big questions in front of them. What does freedom of religion mean under the new Charter of Rights and Freedoms? And does the Lord's Day Act violate it? Tim makes his argument, and then he waits. It takes about a year for the Supreme Court to release its decision on April 24th, 1985.
The Supreme Court says the Lord's Day Act is unconstitutional. On Wednesday,
in a unanimous decision, the court declared the federal Lord's Day Act, which many provinces use to control retail business, violates the guarantee of freedom of religion in the Charter.
The judgment is written by Chief Justice Brian Dixon. In a nutshell, he says, with this Lord's Day Act, we've been compelling, on religious grounds, the universal observance of the day of rest preferred by one religion. And that does not jive with the multicultural heritage of Canadians recognized in the Charter. And Dixon makes it clear that the decision does not deal with whether a common day of rest is a good idea or not. The court is dealing specifically with the Lord's Day Act, which had the original purpose of keeping Sundays holy according to Christian tradition. And that act is now toast. It's been struck down. Nancy Lockhart is at work in the store's front office when she gets the news.
I remember being a bit shocked, I think, that we had taken this thing all the way to the Supreme Court and we had won. And we had a bit of a celebratory moment and, kind of, can you believe it? And then we went back to work. And that was it.
No celebration? I mean, if I were Nancy, I would, go get a new pantsuit or something, let loose a bit.
Oh, yeah. She is all business. As for Tim, he gets a new nickname, the Grinch who stole Sundays. So how does it feel to be the guy
that killed Sunday?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from a lawyer standpoint, to apply a brand new constitutional document for our country, really for the first time, and be successful with it, of course, that's very satisfying.
But there is one thing that irks Tim.
If there's one bugaboo I still have over this whole matter is the fact that they got my name wrong in the Supreme Court of Canada. They had me down as Jim Boyle, so I will be forever known as Jim Boyle officially on the Supreme Court records.
Oh, Tim, I feel your pain. Everyone calls me Falen.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, okay, Tim's name being recorded wrong aside, what was the broader impact of the Big M decision?
Well, it's not every day an entire federal statute is struck down. With this decision, the Supreme Court made it clear there was a new game in town when it came to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Eric Adams spent a lot of time studying the Big M case. He teaches constitutional law at the University of Alberta.
In Big M, Justice Hickson says, a truly free society is one in which can accommodate a wide variety of beliefs, diversity of tastes and pursuits, customs, and codes of conduct. I still find that a stirring idea and one that we need to be reminded of. Our legal system needed to listen to some other voices and peoples that had sometimes been overlooked.
It is pretty remarkable that all of this happened thanks to a neighborhood drugstore in Calgary.
Oh, yeah. And for Eric Adams, there's a lot to celebrate about the Big M case and that idea that regular Canadians made this change.
But that's the way our law works. It's about people. It's about the places on street corners in Calgary as in everywhere else across Canada. And out of those real moments, we write the grand story of our constitutional lives together. And I'm glad to think that we have a constitutional system in which small moments can give rise to big ones.
Adams says this case has been immensely influential. It's been cited about 2,000 times by Canadian courts over the last 40 years. There is one thing it did not do, though. It did not end the Sunday shopping debate. The federal law was gone, but provinces still had their own legislation around the idea of a day of rest and how business hours should be regulated. So the debate continued at a provincial level into the 90s. But eventually, the provinces all dropped Sunday shopping legislation.
It's interesting to think about this Sunday shopping debate now because we don't blink an eye at it these days. Like during the pandemic, I'm pretty certain I Ubered myself a thermometer and ginger ale. You can get whatever you want whenever you want.
Yeah, with online shopping, we can be consumers 24/7. So it can be hard to imagine a time when Sundays were off limits.
So what happened to Nancy and to Big M Drug Mart?
Well, the Big M Drug Mart is no longer. The business expanded to a second location just before an economic slump hit in the 80s and ended up getting sold. Nancy Lockhart went on to become a Shoppers Drug Mart executive in Toronto and has had a successful corporate career. She says the Big M case had a big impact on her.
It gave me the courage that it was okay to fight, that sometimes you just have to take a shot. So I think it really gave me a lot of courage as I moved forward in my life and in my career.
Nancy admits she sometimes gets a twinge of nostalgia for a time when business stopped on Sundays.
You know, there are times when I think life is so busy and maybe it would be nice to have a day of rest. Then I think of how frustrated I as a consumer would be if I couldn't go to a store on Sunday if I wanted to. So I'm glad we did it. I'm glad the law was changed.
So Nancy may not have set out to take down the Lord's Day Act, but she's proud she was part of it and the change it brought about.
If you liked hearing why you can shop on Sundays, or maybe you're a nerd for medieval legal history, share this episode with a friend who might like it too. It's the best way to spread the word about See You in Court. Next week, a violent crime shakes Saskatchewan, and 17-year-old David Milgaard is convicted of the murder. Can his mother, turned detective, get him out of jail? This episode was written and reported by Allison Dempster. Kevin Sexton was a producer on this episode. Sam McNulty is our sound designer. Catherine Rolfson is our senior producer. Carla Hilton is our executive producer. Special thanks to Jim Brown for additional voice work. See You in Court is hosted and produced by me, Falen Johnson.